Well, that's really dark, isn't it? Hello. Hello, and welcome to the last day of September. You can see my giant mess. I have a friend staying with me, and we've got our stuff everywhere. So we're just going to have to deal with that and roll with this. The comments are not restricted tonight. However, this channel has been restricted with, or because some of the things, sorry, shook the camera there. Because of some of the things I've said in the last several weeks of videos, my videos do not seem to be getting out to anyone. And I'm going to make this video anyway, because it's so inherently important right now. I feel like I'm about to sneeze, and hopefully I'm not. Hello and welcome. I'm sorry, I do have the comments turned off so that I do not get distracted by trolls, okay? There's a lot going on in the news cycle. I think you guys know, unless one of you messages me directly, I don't have any idea what's going on in any of the news cycles, above ground, underground, or otherwise. So there's a lot going on. Hopefully this is going to be a short video. My reason for covering up the comments, as you probably know, is because this is an opportunity for me to sit and talk, basically looking at my own face or my own eyes and pull in what needs to be said or what needs to happen here without being distracted and pulled out of that realm where those messages come from. And that happens a lot when I look at haters and trolls. So feel free to comment, like, and share, but I will not see any of your comments, at least not now. Anyway, where to begin with this? I don't know if I want to begin with this part because I might give people a moment to hop on here. I have noticed even the things that are going on now are things that I've already talked about. And in the last week or two, I was like, why even continue making videos? Because everything that's going on is something I've already talked about. But let's do this anyway. A friend of mine sent me a message and said, will you look at and pull a couple cards on the date of October 23rd? That's all she said. There was no heads up. There was no information. Just pull a couple cards on 10/23. And I know some of you here don't really like tarot. I know some of you would prefer I did tarot instead of talking about other things that are going on. I don't really care what everyone wants, right? Because as the magician and as the manifester that we all are and more rapidly becoming here, it is important that we use whatever tools we have. Not everybody uses tarot as a tool or dowsing or, red anesthesiology, but we all use what our talents and our gifts are. So what's really interesting about this, even if we don't look at the cards that I pulled themselves, I have noticed I've been doing cards for a really long time, and I didn't start doing cards for people until on social media. I didn't start advertising and using that as a way of partial income until September 18th, 2021. Okay, so I've only been doing this publicly for that long. So About a year and a half or 2 years ago, when I would do my daily meditation, which is something I really do every day, um, I would ask a question or think about something, and I wouldn't even have to go to the other room and pull cards. When I ask a question, I would see the card. And so, what's really amazing about this is the first card that I saw was the Death card. And the Death card is a Scorpio energy. And what's important about that is to tell you that this is rapidly approaching energy. This is the energy of now. Scorpio season, I they usually start in the middle of the month and go to the middle of the next month. So right now we're in Libra season. As of October 23rd, the date that this person gave me, we will be in Scorpio season from October 23rd until I believe it's November 23rd, maybe the 22nd. I am also Scorpio, as you know, because I tell you all the time about my 6 placements in Scorpio. But the Death card means something's over and there's no going back from this. Now, what's interesting in the really old original tarot, the Death card was always a skeleton riding on a horse. And a horse in tarot always means movement. Okay, so we're talking about a transcendence, a rebirth, no looking back, because the Death card in tarot, you can tell if it's talking about the past or the future by the way the person on that card is looking. So in tarot, when the person on the card is looking to the left, that's looking to the past. And when the face of the person on the tarot card is facing the other direction, facing the right, that means the question or the answer or the query is looking at the future. So the Death card is looking at the future, okay? Because in the Death card, it means that, like in physical reality, death is a finality, right? So when you're talking about the Death card, you're talking about it's over and there's no going back from this. So that was the first card that I saw in my head when I asked the question um, about my friend's date 10/23 that she gave me. The first card was the Death card. So the interesting thing to me about the Death card is, again, it denotes movement, but it denotes movement on land. So the next card that I saw was the Three of Wands. And back in the day, if you were expecting communication to come through, if you were expecting goods, anything that you were expecting to arrive, you would be looking out over at the water, because in the days of tarot, the only way you were getting anything, whether that be a message, a delivery of goods, whatever it was, it was the quote, like waiting for the ships to come in, is what the Three of Wands mean. However, what I found fascinating about this is the Death represents movement on land, and the Three of Wands is a very fast energy, and it denotes movement over water. And the next card I got was the Chariot card. And the Chariot talks about balancing things out and steering ourselves down a fortuitous, enlightened journey. Okay. It's moving forward over external obstacles, is the long story short for the Chariot. So the Death card is movement on land. The Three of Wands is movement over water. And the Chariot means movement by air. Whether you want to think about it esoterically or energetically, you could say, excuse me, that the Chariot could be your light body, but also that could be airplanes, that could be any spacecraft, that could be any kind of event. So when I ask about October 23rd, I have movement on land, Death card, movement over water, right? Three of Wands. Now, Three of Wands can even be, you're expecting a message, or you're expecting some sort of document or whatever. But we've got waiting on land, waiting by the water for something to come over water, and waiting by air. And I was like, oh, we've got movement on land, movement over water, and movement in the air. Oh, crap. This is military. And I don't care I don't think I really should even care what I say on here anymore, because I've been so incredibly suppressed with the last couple of things that I've said. What's the point? I think like 50 people are seeing my videos now instead of 800 or 1,000. So what's the point in stopping, right? So we have movement on land, movement over water, and we have movement by air. And that to me spells out military. So I'm asking you, are we even going to have an election? Uh-oh. What did I just do? Hold on. I don't know what I did. There we go. So sorry about that. Okay, so is there going to be an election? The first thing I want to say about this is we don't jump timelines. I don't care what anybody says, with ease and grace. When we're doing timeline jumping, there's going to be chaos. There's going to be the collapse of certain structures, of certain things coming down. There are many things that you and I, that a whole lot of us want to see systemically crash down. And we know what those are, so I don't think I need to point those out. But we don't jump timelines with ease and grace, okay? There is chaos, there's disruption, there's all kinds of things that factor into this. Even if you think about like a grocery store changing hands, going from, one owner to another owner or whatever, there is going to be some chaos, some retraining of people, some new ways of doing things. And that's what I'm asking you to look at. So when you look at the amount of chaos, you can assure yourself that this is a timeline jump. Okay, there is no doubt about it. And things become really, really uncomfortable. Could be for you personally, but also on the world stage. If we are talking about, because I'm not talking about my personal life here, I'm talking about what's happening on the world stage. So when we come to a timeline jump within the world stage, things are going to become uncomfortable and hectic and chaotic. And we can certainly see that in every direction. The question is, are we uncomfortable yet? Now, even though I think I probably state in every video that unless you yourself are messaging me to tell me something that's going on, I am not aware of it unless it comes through a message or comes through like clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience. Okay, that's where the stuff is coming from. It's not coming from anything external that has been talked about or written about. I don't know why this is coming up. I actually have not even been watching anything. I had a prompt to actually Google something today, and I did, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. But you guys, if you've been here for a while, you know, I want to say it was 1.5 years ago that I kept talking about The Hunt for Red October. Now, that's not a movie that I have even seen. But when I look at what comes up around 1023, it seems to match that storyline. And I was tempted to look up the cliff notes for that movie, but decided not to. So firstly, I want you to know that we don't just look outside and say, oh, there's a rainbow, we jump timelines. Okay, there's always going to be some, chaos and some disturbances. The second thing I want you to know is I believe, or I feel, that there is talk out there of nuclear war. And I want to come at this in a compassionate way, of course. But I want you to understand, if you are looking at mainstream media or even underground media, You're not getting the full story, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, right? Sworn on the Holy Bible. You may be getting parts and pieces of the cover up for what is actually happening. Now, I was watching Kate's Regretless Life tell a story a couple of days ago. And when the video was over, I put my thumb on it to shut my phone off. And right below that, there was I believe it was 57-second video from some guy I've never heard of. What was his name? Earthman, something like that. This guy has like 200 subscriptions to his channel, somewhere around there. Okay. He had a map up. I don't know how many of these buzzwords I shouldn't say. Let me just say this. If you are concerned about nuclear war, we can come at this from two angles. The first thing I want you to know is since September 7th, 2024, 4 major weapons depots in Russia have been bombed. Okay. So if you think nuclear war is going to be allowed to happen on this planet, I'm telling you, got another thing coming. I know many of these places were shut off some time ago, even in the 80s or 90s. Okay. I don't know if I should go into that. So since September 7th, 2024, 4 major Russian weapon depots have been bombed, taking out 77 tons of weapons, most of which were Korean missiles. You heard that correctly. Now, I don't know who this guy is or why he showed up in my feed. Well, I guess we know why he showed up in my feed, but I'd never heard of him, and probably most other people have not heard of him because, like I said, he had like 200 subscriptions to his channel. So if they are preparing for an event and you're thinking about it or people are talking about it, now I'm not saying that they are not planning such an event. What I'm telling you is leading up to planning this and leading up to this October 23rd date, we have 4 major weapons depots in Russia being bombed that got rid of 77 tons of Korean missiles. The second thing I want to say about this, when we think alien or extraterrestrial, what we have been shown in movies and, even on, Ancient Aliens, if you've ever watched that awesome show, I have every single one of them that ever came out. I watched nothing but that for 2 years. That's how entertaining. Plus, the cinematography was amazing, and you could just sit there and travel to all these amazing places by watching this on the big screen. What we are taught, if we're taught anything, we know this situation, this information is very squashed and suppressed, of course. But even within that paradigm of squashing and suppression, we still have all this information that has been told to us that, extraterrestrials are, flying in on the galactic highway and visiting Earth. And while I'm not saying that that's not happening, the majority of the ships that you may have seen or your neighbor may have seen or somebody may have posted a video on YouTube, those are ships that live here with you and I. In fact, I'm going to tell you, and I don't know if this is going to be a surprise to you or not, but there are more what we consider alien or extraterrestrial, which really doesn't even fit the bill either because they're actually terrestrial, right? Because you can say, oh, no, we're Earthlings and they're extraterrestrial or they're alien, but that's really not the truth because we are not from here. This planet is an experiment. And none of us are from here. Okay, so we're all aliens. We're all extraterrestrial, if you want to look at it that way. But the thing is, they are living in the mountains, the oceans, in the forest, all kinds of places. I'm suspecting probably about 60% of them live under the water in the ocean, some of them even in lakes, if those are big enough. Um, at the time I was having planetary discussions with an off-planet a source of military information, he said that the Great Lakes had millions of residents living down in there, and that science had no idea how deep that water actually was. I found that pretty fascinating. And so when the bomb of Hiroshima went off, within, I can't remember if it's 37 or 47 seconds. Either way, the sky, if you can get a hold of any of that original footage or people that have seen that original footage, people that have saved that, probably archived in the Library of Congress somewhere, and probably the Vatican as well. But there were thousands and thousands of spaceships that showed up in around 40 seconds. Okay, so they're not coming from Mars or Venus or any asteroid in 40 seconds. That's not happening. We are, most of us, at least partially aware of their advanced technology. But even if even if you lived in Colorado, to have one person see the spaceship in Ohio and Colorado to see it 30 seconds later, that's alarming to most of us with the technology that we understand our government and military have. Either way, those hundreds, thousands of spaceships that showed up after the bombing of Hiroshima, they are not going to allow this sort of thing to happen. Oh, hello. I saw your face, Rennie. She's the only one that commented. So the question is, are we going to have an election? I just found out today accidentally, and these things keep happening. I went on Facebook to look at my ad that I had made for weddings and special events, because I'm a florist. I've been a florist forever. And you know me, I'll do anything on the side, right? So I went back to go look at my ad that I had placed last week, and there was this footage of, I believe it was North Carolina, just absolutely devastated. Okay. It was really crazy here. My mom lost power, and she lives in assisted living, and none of their backup lights worked. Nothing worked. The hallways were pitch dark over there. We were bringing food. My dad came over with some kind of battery generated thing that'll jump your car that also has a port for USB. So we were all able to charge our phones and try to go on with normal life. There are going to be many disruptions, okay, coming up, starting, yesterday, okay. These many disruptions are asking you to be prepared. Now, you guys, I know that I've been talking about being prepared for a long time, and I thought I was prepared, but there were some things that I wasn't prepared for. I normally don't let my tank run down to empty, right? And because I don't watch the news in any form or fashion, I didn't know what kind of storm we were going to get. So I'm standing in the kitchen, looking out the window, whistling to the birds, and all of a sudden it looked like a hurricane in the side of the yard here where I lived. Okay, so part of the issue here with resolving and returning to electric, and this was not something that I had taken into account. Okay, this is something later. So there were 120,000 people in Cincinnati the night this happened without power. The next day, there were still 75,000 people without power. Well, normally, if you have a power outage, you can call, they've got this pretty streamlined and It's pretty easy to deal with. You can just call and give them your zip code or what your account number, and they will tell you when power is going to be restored in your area. They had no clue, and they could not give an estimate. And I asked if there was any kind of agency I could call, because my mom had people visiting her, but there were a lot of people that did not have people visiting them. There were a lot of people on her floor, the third floor, that were in scooters. They had walkers that they couldn't walk without, and they had wheelchairs. Now, how were they even supposed to get downstairs to get food, to go outside, to do anything? So you've got all these people trapped on the third floor. So one of the things that I was not counting on, well, let me tell you where my brain is. My sister went there the night before. She got there shortly after the power went out. She messaged me and said the power was out, and this was at 3:30, and she said it's going to be back on at 5:30. Well, 5:30 came and it wasn't back on. Well, I guess she texted me at 8:30 at night to tell me the power still wasn't on, only I had already fallen asleep at that time, so I didn't know. So I was asleep early, so I woke up and I texted her at 7 a.m. knowing full well her phone was going to be on airplane mode and she probably wasn't going to answer for a while. She answered immediately and said, "I'm still here. We've been up all night. There's no backup generator. There's no emergency lights in the hallway." They had zero emergency plan, period. So when you're thinking about yourself and your emergency plan, you also have to think about where your family is, if they're over bridges, if they have backup generators, all this kinds of stuff. Because the first thing was, I got up and I thought, well, Kara and Arjuna have been up half the night, as she told me. So I made half a pot of coffee, put it in a mason jar, wrapped it with as many towels as I could find, and stuck it in my lunch bag and drove them hot coffee, because in that situation, the first thing I would want would be a hot drink. So that's what I did. Now, one of the things that I wasn't banking on, because I wasn't watching the news, was that there was this hellacious storm, I guess Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. So what Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky and Indiana always do when there's a big storm down south is they send a huge, huge chunk of their emergency workers, power company workers. They send them down south to help out, right? So me and my dad and Jan went over there the next day. Kara and Arjuna were still there with my mom, and my dad and I are like, we have a hard time sitting still in a small space. My mom's in a very small space, so we're like, we're gonna go walk around, because I knew why the power was out, because when I drove to my mom's, there was a huge area triangled off with caution tape, and I couldn't see what was going, because I didn't want to take my eyes off the road. There was a lot of flooding and stuff too. So me and my dad were like, well, we're going to walk down there and see what's going on with the power lines and see if the power company's here yet, so we have an idea, like, how much longer is this going to be, because, really weird. But the other thing I didn't take into consideration is when something like this happened, since my sister and her partner were there with my mom for 24 hours, when I got there, their phones were almost completely dead. And I thought, okay, well, I can just run your phones out to my car. I have at least two, I think there's at least two phone chargers in all new cars, right? So I was just going to plan on just turning my car on and just leaving it on. I wasn't worried about anybody stealing it and charging their phones. However, my dumbass let my car go down to E, and I knew on E in that car I could probably go like 80 miles, but I couldn't let my car sit there and run for 3 hours to try to charge everyone's phones that was there at the power outage. So what I'm saying is, there are more things here to think about and consider in a state of emergency than just like having your bag packed and stuff like that. So there's a lot more things to consider. Right now, there's also a lot more things to consider because there's a lot more going on. Now, the storm here wasn't even that bad. I mean, there were a lot of down power lines and down trees, but when you're looking at the rest of the United States, we had nothing. But we also had almost no workers because normally in a power outage, depending how bad the weather is, the power is usually back up in 1 to 5 hours. I have never ever lived anywhere, and I've lived all over Cincinnati, that had a power outage that lasted 28 hours. That's unheard of. Now, I'm not complaining because so many places had such a worse time. I'm just asking you to think about some of those things as well. North Carolina, I guess, was waiting in line for a mile or two to get gas. Okay, so there you can plan on having gas shortages. Okay, the food chain, in case you haven't noticed, especially if you're looking for gluten-free or healthy food, that has definitely not only doubled in price, but has been hard to find. There's going to be more where that came from. Now, I don't know why, but I guess, so I was sitting here earlier and I thought, I should make a video tonight, just to talk about, the chaos and uncertainty of jumping timelines and the cards that I pulled, the message about movement on land, movement on water, and movement by air being a military style message, and letting you guys know that 4 places in Russia have been bombed since September 7th, and 77 tons of Korean missiles were lost. Now, what I'm saying is you're going to be getting partial truths. So yes, there was attack on Korean missiles, okay, in that area. But did it come from who they're saying it came from? Did it really come from the Ukraine? Okay, because I'm telling you, when they put these stories out, the actual happening of something may be the truth, but the information surrounding it, like the who and the why, is going to be on one side. That information is going to be curtailed, because, as I keep saying, we don't talk about military strategy in the middle of a chess game. There's no talking across the table. So that's part of it. Now, both sides of the polarity, good and bad, evil and light filled, however you want to look at the duality of the third dimension, either side that's saying to you 77 tons of Korean missiles were lost between September 7th and now, you may know that, but you may not know who's taking it out, where that's coming from, and why certain pieces of information are being diluted or convoluted, or omitted on purpose. This is very important for you to understand. And it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter right side or left side or upside or downside to the media, underground or mainstream media. No one's going to be giving you the straight truth. Now, today, when I sat down at the computer and I was getting ready to pull up YouTube to make this video, I was prompted to Google port strikes. I have no idea where this came from, and since I don't watch the news, I had no idea this was happening. Okay, maybe you guys already knew this. I want you to take this information with a grain of salt. When I looked this up, port strikes, it came up. This was a story on the news 2 hours ago. Okay, so whatever I connected to was from 2 hours ago. Now, there's some, usually when you look at these kinds of incidences or stories or videos or blogs from someone, the first couple of sentences is going to be the truth. Like, yes, we've lost 4 major Russian areas have been bombed, taking out 77 tons of missiles. Okay, so that's going to be correct. Where it came from is probably not going to be correct. Why it's happening, the who and the why is going to be left out or jumbled in all of these stories. It's really important for you to know. So I'm sitting here and I'm prompted to look up U.S. port strikes, and I look it up, and I think it was like maybe a 4 or 5 minute video. I watched 2 minutes of it, and this was all I needed to know. Everything after this was just a bunch of crap about statistics and how it was going to cost the United States $5 billion a day, for the strike, of course, because they want you to be against this. But let me tell you something. U.S. port strikes are happening now, as in right now, as in if something doesn't get resolved by midnight, before the clock strikes October 1st, we are going to have an even bigger problem than what those storms created. Okay, so the U.S. port strikes that are happening right now, if nothing gets resolved tonight before midnight, we have a serious problem. Now, listen very closely to what I'm saying is the reason for the strike. Anybody into numerology might want to look up 77. Okay, 7 is a spiritual number to begin with. Now, here's what they're saying the strike stipulations are, and this is all they said. These workers want a 77. I'm telling you guys, I just told you, I just now realized that 77 tons of Korean missiles were just wiped, okay? And now the workers for the U.S. port that are on strike want a 77% increase. And when you're wanting the answers, math, sacred geometry, there's where your logic is. These workers want a 77% increase. And here's the only other thing they wanted. And I'm going to let you decide, but I feel like this is the real reason. Many of you know what's been happening overseas in these underground areas, what has been going on in shipping containers. There are some things that I don't want to say, though I don't know what's the point since I'm already shadow banned to the nth degree here. The things that they move in shipping containers most are children. Okay, so here's what these workers want. They want a 77, there's that magical number again, % increase in pay. Here's the only other stipulation, and I believe actually that this is probably the reason for the strike. You know, people are becoming incredibly awake and aware, and it's not just a small handful of us that know about and understand human trafficking anymore, okay? They said their stipulation is they literally want to promise that cranes, those would be the things that move the shipping containers, the gates, which allow shipping containers to go in and out, and the container itself to be manned by a human being and not artificial intelligence. They are literally going on strike. The main reason is that dock workers want a 77% increase raise. But more importantly, they want a promise that the gates, the cranes, and the shipping containers will be monitored by actual people and not artificial intelligence. If this is not resolved tonight by midnight, this strike would shut down 36 ports all the way from the top of the East Coast in Maine and all the way down to Texas. That's a huge chunk, not only of the East Coast, but part of the South Coast as well. 36 ports from Maine to Texas will be shut down if this is not resolved. Now, I'm really asking you to think about the things that I've been asking you to think about for a really long time. The bag being packed. Please be smarter than me and don't let your tank go down on E. I knew like that there was going to be a storm coming. I just didn't know, you know. Actually, I take that back. I was laying in bed. It was pouring down rain. And I kind of had the idea where this is going because I started speaking out loud of protection while making an arc of energy from one side of the building to the other repeatedly to keep the power on in this building. I do that every time there's a major storm. I protect the building I'm living in from power outage. Okay, so if you think back to what I said about Fukushima, within 40 seconds or 47 seconds, there were thousands of ships here. Those thousands of ships were not coming from light years away. They were coming from this planet's mountains and oceans and forests or wherever they are, you guys. And I want to tell you that there are more, I don't know what to call them because they're not alien. They were actually here before we were, if you want to know the truth. And as you know, there are many different variations on what people believe to be true and not true. I used to see channelings of people all the time saying this at oh, and the Pleiadians are going to save us, or the Syrians are going to save us, the Arcturians are going to come in and be our medical team, whatever. Okay. They are not authorized to do that. And as there is not only a global codex, but a universal codex where we are in our part of the universe here, the non-interference thing, which is amazing because the negative forces they're interfering so much. But the positive ones, you can have a conversation with them. You can talk to them. You can even get information from them if you want to. But they are not going to show up at your door and say, oh, you're a dumbass. You didn't get gas. Let me help you out. Okay. They're not going to do those things. There is one exception and one exception only, and that is absolute catastrophe. Okay. So the only way that any extraterrestrial, I guess we should call them planetary terrestrials, interdimensionals. I don't even know what to call them anymore. I think you get the point. I'm telling you, there are more of them here, and they were here first before we were here. Okay. They are not going to allow a nuclear holocaust. Okay. And nuclear holocaust could come from two directions. Okay. It could come from man-made missiles and weapons and the crap like that. Okay. It could also, this is not fear mongering. I'm just telling you, these are the only two scenarios where they would intercept. Okay. So solar flare could burn and fry many things. Okay. Why do you think so many races on this planet live below the water, live below ground, live in Agartha? No need to say more. There are millions of people below ground, and they are below ground for a reason. These things have happened before, and they got tired of dealing with it and didn't want to take their chances anymore. So they went for a more peaceful place. Okay. They are ever watching and ever monitoring what is going on in this planet. And if there was a solar flash, for example, that was more harsh than we could handle, let's say, people would, you and I, people would be taken somewhere. I'll be that 24 hours, 2 weeks, whatever, until the dust settles, whatever. So I'm saying the only situation these, let's call them, we might as well call them our neighbors. That's what they are, right? These interterrestrial Earth beings that are here sharing this planet with us are not going to allow a mass extinction event to be carried out. Okay. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I will tell you, if you've been following me for a while, one of my friends that even remember me saying a couple years on Facebook that there is an evacuation plan for these type of scenarios. Okay. Try not to get too bogged down by worst case scenario, fear porns things, because our worst case scenario right now is really the worst part of all of this is that there's a million stories a day to keep up with, and you could literally drive yourself mad if you are doing so right now. And that's why I stayed so out of touch and so uninvolved, right? I knew the storm was coming. I protected the house. I knew when I was told to look up U.S. Port strikes that there was something going on. And I looked it up. So, you know, even though I pulled those 3 cards from my friend that asked about October 23rd, 2024, I don't just use cards, right? I can Google things. I meditate on things. I ask for answers when I'm walking. Answers come through other people in the grocery store. They come from comments on this video. Answers come from a multitude of places. Okay, but I was only telling you about Fukushima because, you know, when was that, 1945? There were thousands of ships that showed up at that time. Okay, and so I'm saying, when we timeline jump, it doesn't happen with ease and grace. Things become uncomfortable. Are we uncomfortable? Yes. We have a lot of situations that are extremely uncomfortable. And are we set to have an election in November? That's debatable, because I haven't been able to see this election for the last 3 years that I've been asking about it. I don't see one. All I get to happy resolve. But sometimes I am especially protected from certain things that I shouldn't talk about. You wouldn't know that with everything I've said here this evening. So I left the comments open, and no nastygrams and no trolls. And I believe that's probably because of the suppression of this channel for whatever I said in the last couple weeks. So anyway. Is this comfortable for me to sit here and deal with trolls? No, it's really not. But somebody's got to be talking about this. And I'm saying, when I'm telling you I have opted out of both ends of the news cycle, I honestly have. If I get a hunch or a premonition or a message from higher self to look something up, I'm going to do it. When you guys are prompted to send me information or ask me questions, you're going to do that. And so there's always, even though I'm completely out of the loop on both sides of the polarity, I am burning up. There's always something or some message or one of you that says, hey, can you take a look at this? Or can I ask you something about this? Or did you know this was going on? Okay, so a lot going on. Now, one of the things I wasn't prepared for, make sure you have a full tank of gas at all times. If you have a place to store some gasoline out of harm's way, I seriously suggest you do that. My girlfriend's car had, her last car, Honda Insight, had this like battery pack that you could jump the car with. And when my mom's power went out and we all needed to everyone needed to charge their phones, my dad brought over the jump battery that he bought for his car, because they travel a lot, his just in case jump battery. It also had USB ports to charge the phones. And even after charging 4 cell phones completely, this kind of car jumper cable that had the USB ports. Sorry, he didn't know the name of it, and I don't either. It charged 4 phones, and it didn't deplete any of the battery, while charging that many phones. And it also charged the phone twice as fast as a normal phone charger. And I am going to get these because, my original thought, my silly little backup plan here was, well, if we have a power outage, I would sit in my car and charge my phone in my car, but it doesn't charge as fast in the car. That's one thing. And if you're low on gas or trying to be resourceful with your gas or not use it, then you probably don't want to be sitting in your car, running your car for 3 hours to charge your phone. Okay. So things to think about. The person over here that thought they were prepared, I wasn't prepared for my mom being in a place. And luckily, thank God, we moved her in June because she was almost an hour drive coming and going. Now she's, I don't know, 4 miles from me or something. So 12, 15 minutes, depending on traffic. She's that close. Thank God for this incident. She's kind of in the middle, and she's close to my other sister as well. Oh, hello, Dawn. Rock solid. How you doing? There's 7 people here. So those of you who just, whoo, I actually went walking and spinning my ball a while ago. I had pants on and a sweater and a hat, and the sun came out for the first time in I think 6 days, and I was like sweating and burning up. I had to stop spinning the ball and come home. I just wanted to come here and most importantly let you know that we don't change timelines. We don't jump timelines or change timelines on a global scale without things going out the window. If you know tarot, think of it as a tower moment, right? Lightning strikes, and anything that wasn't built on a foundation of truth, right? Anything that was built on a faulty foundation is not going to make it through a tower moment. And that's where we are. We are going to see things collapse. And as I mentioned, we have more interdimensional planet terrestrial beings living with us here that we, somehow think those are magically, on Venus or Mars or whatever. Okay. There are more of them here than us. Okay. And there will be no nuclear scenario that is catastrophic from the sun or from nuclear weapons. And I'm telling you, these races, they live here. You think they want to have their house blown to smithereens? No. Okay. And also, it's part of the Galactic Codex. Okay. The Galactic Codex is a very long list of rules and regulations, from peace treaties to all the way down to how they're not allowed to interfere in soul-to-soul relationship connections. Galactic Codex is taken very seriously by the white hats or the good guys or whatever you want to call them. Okay. And we know we're going to have a good guy and a bad guy, an up and a down, a left and a right. Okay. A Democrat and a Republican. This is the third dimension. Third dimension is physical reality. It's a physical reality of polarity. But what I'm telling you is they are not going to stand by when there are more of them than there are of us living here. Okay. And I don't even know, I guess we'll have to go back to what I said earlier. Like, we're not terrestrial, we're extraterrestrial too. We're not from here. People go around saying, oh, I'm a starseed. I'm a starseed. That's great. It helps you understand initially that you're an old soul and that you're not from here. But guess what? None of us are from here, but these terrestrials that live here that most of us don't know about, there are more of them than us. And they are not going to let something destroy this entire planet, like nuclear war. Okay. They're not going to get involved in the prices of groceries. They're not going to get involved in, these port strikes from Maine to Texas. They're not going to get involved in that. They're going to let humans figure it out. There is only one scenario where they will, and then they are involved in our planet and the decision making. There are members of this group even within our government and within all areas of planetary life. And I think a lot of us know that. We had a heads up on that already. Okay. But this is not just home to the human, to the starseed, to the light worker who also didn't come from here. There are millions, right? So if there are 8 billion of us, there are probably 10 billion of 9 or 10 billion of them. I'm telling you that right now. And though they're not going to get involved in, strikes or election fraud or anything else, there is one scenario. I have been told this over and over again since I was very young. There is one scenario that they will override, that they will step in and intervene without being asked. Okay. And that is of the nuclear variety. Oh, hello, Joyce. Yes. I think we're I resonated for a very long time with that term Pleiadian myself, and then I realized, wow, I'm such a mixed bag. I'm such a mutt, right? Like so many of us came from Andromeda, and we've circled our way around through Arcturus and the Pleiades and Syrah and so many different places. Okay, so timeline jumps are not done with ease and grace on the world stage. Okay. Neither are they in your personal life. But this story is really not about you or me. But timeline jumps don't happen with ease and grace. Things become really uncomfortable. We have all become very knowledgeable and very uncomfortable, okay, in the last several years. This is going to change. But as I said, sometimes change requires leveling all that's not built on a solid foundation that humanity itself doesn't want, and a small group of people do want. Homie ain't going to play that anymore is the only way I can really say that. If you're just joining late, please go back and watch the rest, because I've been talking about here the strike of U.S. port workers, the bombing of missile facilities, and all kinds of other stuff, guys. I'm telling you. And if you can, like I know Dawn and I think Rennie as well are kind of in the country. They're not surrounded by people. They may have a little less to deal with. Also, the last thing I want to say is I've been making jokes about having my bag packed so I could get out of the hood before the shit hit the fan. And it was so funny because there's a numerologist that comes up in my feed only like in my shorts. And he said, if you are ever thinking in hard times or bad times, right, in states of emergency, if you're ever thinking about getting out of the hood and going to the suburbs, reconsider your options. What he said was, historically, through every like catastrophic thing that was imposed by a leadership or a government or a group of people, the people in the suburbs did not stand up to it. And the people in the hood were like, oh, hell no, this is not happening on my dime in my neighborhood. Okay, so apparently in the hood, we're very possessive. And I'm not really in the hood, but there's a little bit of a hood in many places around here. So apparently it's better to be where I already am, and I don't need to go anywhere. There's a lot happening. So think about, in the case of, emergencies, We are having a lot of earth changes, as we can see by these hurricanes. I know a lot of you are thinking about and talking about and reading about HARP and many things like that, weather weaponry. But there is something I want you to know. Don't always assume just because there's a catastrophe that it is the mastermind of the cabal, okay? Because it's not always the case. If you're wondering and want to use your intuition, when you see a major event happen, count back to the last 10-ish days and look at space weather. That's what I'm going to say to you, okay? Because whatever we keep propagating and putting out there, we're going to keep getting more of and more of and more of. And I know about Bluebeam, and I know they've used it forever, and I know they love their little toys, okay? But our sun is in a different cycle, and many of us know about this different cycle, okay? So you have to realize it messes with the atmosphere, the ionosphere, everything. It can turn the magnetic field upside down. And think about an upside down magnetic field and what that would do. Okay? Earthquakes, flooding, tornadoes, all of this kind of stuff. Okay? So try to stay in your higher frequency, even if you're studying. I'm not telling you to be like me and disregard all form of media and social media. I'm not saying that. But we're in the middle of a timeline jump. There's going to be some chaos. Don't blame it all or give all the credit to these guys, please. And thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good idea, Dawn. And also think about, like, you're stocking up on food, but think about how you're going to make it, and all those other things as well, right? Because I know how to make a heater out of a clay pot and a muffin pan and a votive candle. And all of you have been talking about that for 3 years. So hopefully all of you are aware of that. If not, you can find 100 videos on YouTube on how to make a clay pot radiator heat. It's only going to work for about 200 to 250 square feet. So you're going to have to pick a room that you wish to stay warm, but there's a way to do it. If you've been collecting wood for fire, just make sure that some of it's out of the rain in case it rains for 12 days. We kind of have to think through the scenarios. But looking at Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina is the only place that popped up in my Facebook feed tonight. So I don't know what's going on everywhere else. But look at those situations. Pray for those people. It's very important that we're doing that. Sending them love, whatever your special thing is, right? Like I said earlier, sometimes I pull cards. Sometimes I do things. We need to do things with all the tools that we have. I said I was going to make a short video. It's been over an hour, so I am going to go. But be safe and make good choices and think about things, because I know there are a lot of things that we don't think about. I remember telling someone one time about preparedness, and he's like, I have a gas stove. And I'm like, yeah, but your gas stove is still plugged in to the wall back there. So think about these things. But also, like I just realized, you also are going to have to think about your surroundings, where you are, who's next door to you. Are they prepared in any way for any of this? Where are your parents? Are they in a place where you'd have to go help them or whatever? So I know you guys are resourceful, but I just wanted to tell you, timeline jumps do not happen with ease and grace. Things become really uncomfortable. The world stage is definitely uncomfortable. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. And remember, there are so many millions, billions of people, of races that live here that you might not be aware of, that will have our back, and they will have our back in one scenario only. Now, they will have our back in hundreds of scenarios if we ask them, if we invite them, if we make them part of the plan. But I'm talking about stepping in, overriding, saving the day sort of thing that we always think these alien groups are going to do. That's going to happen in one event and one event only, and that's nuclear, right? Stay in peace. Give yourself a little quiet time without an overload of information, perhaps, and focus on what. Think about the things that you would do if you're going to go on a camping trip for 2 weeks. Think about those things that you would need. And I would say plan from there. Okay. Thank you for being here with the news that didn't make the news. And I will see you next time. Bye.